Okay guys, so a research proposal is actually really important when producing a research project. We ask you to do the same thing in research practices, so you get a little bit of heads up of what you're actually going to need to do in this task. So a research proposal provides an overview of what you're going to do when you research your question. So the first paragraph actually asks you very explicitly to state what your question is and how you came up with it. You might put a screenshot of your narrowing the topic template if that's what you've used. You might provide a description, but what happens is that the person who moderates this for the SACE board must understand how you came about your question, how you narrowed it down, where you started and where you ended. Sometimes a picture is easier to explain to or provide evidence of what you've done rather than just a description. Something else that you need to write in there is why this is important to you. Why is this question something that you're interested in? Not I'm just interested in it, but why specifically have you chosen this question? What is it about this question that you think will be able to help you understand the world in which you live better? All right. The second part of this is about the research, the ways that you're going to research, and in this case we call these research processes. So if you're going to read newspapers, that's a research process. If you're going to watch YouTube documentaries, that's a research process. What you need to explain is the different types of research processes that you're going to use, and then why each one is appropriate for the question that you've asked. So if you're going to research something on, for example, the culling of sharks in South Australia, one of the research processes that you may use is interviewing a local fisherman. You might interview them in order to understand how often sharks attack their catch and whether or not this is influencing their revenue. If you're researching shark attacks, you might also contact a museum and find out how often sharks attack humans in South Australia, and therefore work out from that whether or not there's a trend, or if it's just a one-off, it's one of those crazy things that happen every so often. You could also, if you're looking at shark attacks in Australia, watch some documentaries, some 60 minutes videos of people who have actually been attacked by sharks and what they think, what their opinion of culling actually is, whether or not they believe that sharks could be culled, or if they think that perhaps humans are in the shark's environment and therefore they should really expect or at least acknowledge that they've put themselves in that situation. So each type of process that you use, so researching using interviews or research using newspaper articles, you need to explain why that type of process or source is really specific to your question. Not all sources will or processes will be specific. If you're not asking for an opinion, do not do a survey. If you're not asking about students' opinions, do not do a survey of people who go to our school. You try to avoid making using information that's really not relevant, all right? The next thing that you talk about in there is ethics. So if you are interviewing someone, you need to ask for consent to use their information in your final product, in your outcome. If you want to record a child doing something like building something, you need consent from their parents, because they're under the age of 16, in order to include their face or their image in your outcome. If it's going to cost money to produce whatever it is that you want to produce, you need to consider how that's going to be paid for. If you want to conduct an experiment, you need to think of the occupational health and safety issues that are related to your question or your experiment, and how you're going to make sure you're applying those to your situation. The capabilities section that's included in there is something that the SACE board requires you to do. The capabilities are different depending on what your question is aimed at. So my suggestion would be to go to the SACE board website and download the thing called the capabilities student worksheet. It has a different page on each capability and explains what each one means. Underneath it has a series of dot points that how you could possibly show that capability. What I would suggest you do is read through those dot points and decide whether or not those apply to your question, and if they do, how they would apply to your question. In that case, then you can look at which capability has more of those dot points that are applicable to you, and you can choose that as your capability that you're going to develop. All right. Your outcome is your outcome plan is the last thing that you need to include. This is how it best shows your answer. So lots of people choose to do reports because they think that they can divide their information into subheadings, which will help them be able to make sense of their information. You could do something like a how-to guide if that's what you want to do. You could do a video, just so long as it shows what you've learnt and how you've learnt it. You need to explain to the SACE board moderator why that is the most appropriate type of outcome for your question. So I've provided you with an example through the website, but there's also a template to write to. When you've got questions, everything that you answer, you need to justify why that is your answer. So don't just go, I'm going to make a newspaper article. Actually explain why a newspaper article best suits your question. Don't just say, I'm going to interview my grandma. Explain why an interview with your grandma is most appropriate for your question. All right. This should be about 1 page long, an A4 page, typed in about size 11 Arial narrow. You can make your margins as wide as you want, or as skinny as you want them to be, just so long as when it prints out you can read everything. If you want to include a picture of your narrowing the topic or how you came up with it, if you include a screenshot or a picture, it has to be produced electronically because you're not allowed to shrink anything. So if you've handwritten it, make an electronic copy of it so that you can actually show what you've done without actually shrinking the size of the image or what you've produced. All right. Any questions, please email me or ask me and I'll help you out. Cool? Easy. Thanks a lot.